Hello everybody, I'm Garrulus64 and welcome to something a little bit different. I've done tutorials on the channel before, but that's mainly for playing mods or setting them up in your own games. Today I'm coming to you with a tutorial on something that has become a big passion of mine over the last several weeks. This is a tutorial not on how to use mods, but how to actually make them. Now, before I learned how to make mods like this, I didn't know anything about Blender, so I learned very basic Blender stuff for this specific purpose. If you follow this tutorial, though, you probably won't have to know too much, because I'm going to try and be very specific about where you're supposed to click and what buttons do what. First things first, this tutorial is going to be specifically for the Super Mario 64 Co-op Deluxe branch of the PC port of Mario 64. I'm going to assume you already have it or know how to get that working. Most importantly, I believe, we'll be grabbing Blender 4.2. We're going to need that as it's the main thing we're going to be working in for this tutorial. Here we have this thing called Fast 64 GART Edition, which is specifically made so we can work in Blender with Nintendo 64 materials relating to Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time. Another GitHub page here, we also need this character template file for Co-op Deluxe. These are going to be the files you need to start putting together your custom characters. It's going to have all the pieces of Mario, Luigi, Toad, or Wario, depending on which one you want to use as your base. There will also be one more download that is going to be a direct download, so don't panic, it's nothing dangerous, it's just the template file for setting up your mod folder later. It's going to make it a lot easier so you don't need to make a bunch of folders and worry about file structure. And finally, for real this time, you're going to need a model to replace Mario's. It doesn't have to sync up with Mario perfectly, but of course that does help when setting it up, especially if you haven't done this before. For this, I'm going to be using this Toei Sonic model made by Zionist23, and if you're looking for a custom model, you haven't got this far yet, you can always come here to the models resource, and you can either go to their custom edited section or to any of these consoles to find a model you want to use. Typically, I stick to things like N64, Nintendo DS, Dreamcast, stuff like that. If you really want to put in something from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, be my guest. I just don't want to have to deal with, some of the Vertex group stuff you're going to see later. And now that we have all of that stuff situated, you can put it wherever you're not going to lose it, and our first step in the process is going to be to open up Blender. When you first open Blender, you're probably going to see something a little bit like this. Please ignore the cube, he has nothing nice to say. Before anything else, you're going to come up here to the Edit tab, Preferences, come to Add-ons, click this little down arrow, and then click Install from Disk. You are then going to navigate to wherever you put the Fast64 GART main.zip. You don't want to extract this file, you want this to be in the zip file. Give it that location, and then it should appear in your list here, Fast64 GART Edition. You need to make sure it is checked on. That is very important. Make sure you do this. Step 2, we are going to open up one of our character templates. So I am going to navigate to where I have my template stored. When you unzip that character templates file that you downloaded, you should see things like Mario Co-op template, Toad Co-op template, Luigi Co-op template, caps for proper, whatever that says. I can't read the whole thing. I have a few extra in here because I'm very bad at organizing my files, but what we're going to do for the purpose of this tutorial is use the Mario template. So right here I have my Mario template. We open that up. Should just take a moment, and textures may be slow to load in. You might get this upgrade to F3D materials thing pop up. I get it every time I open these templates. I hit OK sometimes I don't. It doesn't seem to change anything either way. Just hit OK to be safe, I guess. So here we are in the Mario template, and I know this is going to look scary if you don't know too much about Blender. I know I was freaked the heck out the first couple times I tried to do this, but I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do to make this work, and I will make sure to, emphasize where I'm going. When you open your Mario character template, it's going to look a little different than mine. It's mainly because I just deleted the weird boundary things that are going around all of these. You can also delete the texture plane down here. It doesn't do anything. It's just like a little visual representation of textures. You want to keep everything else as it is, though, including Mario down here. So if you remember, this was Nintendo's first big 3D game, and the idea of a T-pose had not crossed anybody's mind yet. So what we have instead is what we call the crumple pose. All of Mario's animations play off of this pose here, so we are going to need to do some silliness in this tutorial. We're going to need to uncrumple Mario, replace his model, and then recrumple our model into this position. Very important terminology update before we go on. I'm going to be referring to something called bones. That is all of these little things that you see on Mario. These are bones. They make up what is called the armature. Think of that sort of like the overall skeleton of Mario. Mario himself, all of this stuff that looks like Mario, is called the mesh. I just want to mention this stuff because I'm going to be saying things like this and I might not explain it. Now to begin the process, we must click one of these bones, any bone on Mario here, make sure they're all highlighted, and come up here, change object mode to pose mode. Now that we're in pose mode, we're going to uncrumple Mario. You can hold shift and then click right arm, right thigh, left thigh. Come over here, rotate, and then make sure on this side here, you can press N to open this little menu if it's not open already. Come up to the item tab, and we're going to rotate 180 degrees or negative 180 degrees to get these limbs to the correct position. Take right arm, we do 90 degrees. Left arm, negative 90. Right shoe, left shoe, we're going to turn those negative 70 degrees on the Z-axis, and then to finish this up, we are going to turn these fellas right hand positive 20 degrees on the X-axis, left hand negative 20 degrees on the X-axis. And after you make that last bone adjustment, you're going to want to click the armature again here, click any bone, click Fast 64 on the side, and scroll to the bottom. And this is going to be your holy grail throughout this whole process. You are going to apply as rest pose. Whenever you mess with these bones, I compulsively do this, that way I can backtrack in case I mess anything up. After Mario has been uncrumpled, what I like to do is come up here and file save as and make an uncrumpled Mario template file. That way you don't have to initially uncrumple him every time you want to make a character. I do that to save some time. But now I'm a bit of an uncrumpling pro, so maybe it's good to just keep doing it until you get used to it. Now comes the fun part. We're going to get our model into the game and start replacing Mario. So we're going to come in here, our Toei Sonic folder. We see Toei Sonic is a .obj file. We want to see what kind of file it is first, because Blender's going to ask, and if we don't know, we're going to look pretty freaking silly when we get to that point. Quick note, again, this is a custom model made by Zinus23. This, like all of the other resources, will be linked in the description. So knowing that we have an OBJ file, we come up here to File, Import, OBJ. Navigate to where your model is. I think it was in my tutorial folder. Yep, I got lost there for a sec. And here, wow, we have the big man himself, Toei Sonic. When you get your model into Blender, there are a few things you want to check before you proceed. So as you can see here, Toei Sonic looks like he has a little bit of segmentation on his limbs. So you can see right here. And if I click between them, it shows that this model is in several different pieces. When your model is first imported into Blender, it should have every piece highlighted. And we can see that here. Sneaky little tactic here, when everything is highlighted after the import, you're going to want to press Ctrl-J, and now this model is all one piece. That is what we wanted. Next up, you want to click your model, come over here to the Fast 64 tab again, and then click Principled BSDF to F3D Converter. This is going to change the textures of your model so that Mario 64 won't have a panic attack trying to figure out how to work them. It's looking very nice. You can also right-click and shade smooth, just to keep up Mario 64 shading, but sometimes that looks a little weird. So I end up going with auto. Or heck, even flat. I think flat might just work better for this one in particular. One last thing to check, you can click your model, come down here to this little triangle icon. If your character has any vertex groups in this area here, you're going to want to click delete here until they have no more, because it will just clutter up some stuff later. You can also check out their texture files here and rename things if there's multiple. But right now, we only really have one. I'm going to call this fur texture just for now. I'm future-proofing it for a lesson we'll learn later. Now that Sonic is all set with that, we are going to shrink him down to size. So we come over here to the scale function, click your model, and whoop! Sound effect optional, but, you know, just tends to make it feel a little bit more special each time. As we get smaller here, we can start rotating Sonic with the rotate tool. We were trying to match him up with Mario here. He does not need to match completely with Mario, but the closer he is, the easier it's going to be to set this stuff up. Of course, he's still a bit large, so let's take him down to size. I think I want him to be just around Mario's size, if not a little bit smaller, to be in line with canon. I'm always a stickler for the canon. Best advice I can give for this part is line up their shoes as best as you can. Either that or go with the arms, which I actually did a pretty good job of. As we can see here now, Sonic is wedged firmly within Mario. You know, let's go with a different phrasing. As we can see, our two models have basically fused together, and what we need to do next is truly fuse them together. You can do any kind of adjustments here, like I do want to line up a little bit more with the hands, I guess. It'll make it a little bit easier in the long run. Now that they're like that, we're going to click the Mario mesh. Remember, that's the Mario part of Mario. We're going to come over here to edit mode. What I want you to do is highlight one of the little vertices, that's one of these points on your wings. Press L, highlight both of them, and then press H. After you have hidden these wings, they're not deleted, you can then press A to select the rest of Mario's verts, then press delete, and delete the rest of his verts. We do not need Mario any longer. Go back to object mode, and our wings will reappear, and coincidentally, they're actually in a pretty good place for our model already. That means the armature shouldn't require too much modifying either. So we're going to leave those alone for now, and we're going to click the armature again. Click edit mode. This will allow us to move the bones without moving the mesh associated with them. We just need to make some very small changes so that these bones are now going to be like touching the Sonic mesh. So we highlight all of these, move them slightly down so they're on arm. I meant to get all of those at the same time, but I guess luck was just not on my side. Let's see, I think that's fine. I think I'm gonna move the hand bones just a tiny bit back, because that last part is gonna be the hand. And the shoes, we're gonna move these over slightly just because he's a little bit narrower stanced than good old Mario was. Okay, so that looks pretty set. Torso, bone, head look fine. Gotta make sure once you're done, you click one of them, come down here, and apply as rest pose. Always apply as rest pose, it's important. Now that our skeleton matches up with our model, we are going to click our model, hold shift, and then click the wings. Remember your model, then the wings, and then click Ctrl J on your keyboard to join them together. Sonic is now the Mario mesh. He has usurped the throne, and there is no going back. Next comes my favorite, least favorite part, vertex grouping. Click your model, come up here to edit mode. You're gonna see all of these vertices show up again. Remember, you can select everything by pressing L on your model. You can also come down here and change the way it will select vertices. Sometimes UV makes it easier to select certain things. For now, I'm just going to keep it on normal because this model is segmented pretty well. So to explain what this vertex grouping thing is, I'm going to first select every vertex on my model's head. Make sure we have everything. It looks like we do. And then we're going to scroll over here and click this data, scroll to the top of the list, and find that we have these things called vertex groups. So we are going to assign the head DL group to the head. And then I usually hide what I've done to make sure I got the whole thing. And what we're doing here is we are assigning these things called vertex groups to these vertices so that the game knows how to use these funny little noodle arms in the same animations that Mario was going to. I hope that makes sense. Basically, you are taking the pieces of your model and you are matching them up to the pieces of Mario. So what we just did was the head. So this, for example, is going to be the torso along with this. Depending on your model's anatomy, there could be a butt vertice group, which should be the lower part of your torso, but this one seems like it is not going to be that kind of case. Now, the rest of this stuff should be rather simple. Piece by piece, right arm color is the group of verts that should be attached to your model's torso, so that's this immediate section. The next part should be the forearm, and I believe I'm going to make this cuff a part of the right forearm as well. This part right here is going to be our right hand, of course. Now I'm showing you this in excruciating detail because this part was very difficult to understand for me when I first was trying to get this to work. The important stuff to understand here is that every single one of these little black dots, these vertices, needs to be assigned to a vertex group, or else your model is not going to export out of Blender. And if any of these vertices have multiple vertex groups assigned to them, then it also won't export. And a slew of other things. This is a very picky process, and sometimes it's a lot of trial and error. This is not a difficult process, it is simply tedious. And for instance, if your character doesn't have legs, but they have feet, like let's say something like Kirby or King Dedede, you can very easily use the Toad template instead because the Toad model does not have legs. Again, I hide these things just so I know that I've already worked with them. So that means our whole model should be set. We can Alt-H to get the whole thing back, head back into object mode, and just for luck, I always slam that friggin' apply as rest pose button. Make sure you have your armature selected though. Now, we have to recrumple Sonic. I'm sure this is not gonna feel good, and any pacifists and squeamists must look away. I said squeamist? Like a squeamish person is like a choice. Like I choose to be squeamish. Click a bone, go to pose mode, and we're going to do the opposite of what we did earlier. Which means we're going to return this to 70 degrees. Right thigh and left thigh, we're going to make them 180 degrees or negative 180 degrees. I'm going to take the right arm to negative 90 degree town. Also, that was not like a euphemism for anything. That was just me trying to spice up my dialogue. Anyway, 90 degrees. And then finally, we take both of these and turn them 180 degrees. We should end up at like negative 270. Come down here, apply as rest pose. Important, apply as rest pose. We are coming to the point where we get to actually see this thing in action. But before we see it in game, we can see it in the in-blender animation viewer. So click one of your bones. Come down here to this little icon here. If you want the idle pose, click in-game example. This is currently what our model looks like, and it's because I did not assign the vert groups correctly. Of course, silly man, I always do this. But don't fret, this is a very easy fix and I'll show you what to do. So if something seems wrong when you're looking at it in its animated view, what I usually like to do is come to edit mode and then run over here to find the vert groups that I want to check out or I want to get out of the way. Select the ones that I don't want to be visible because I'm dealing with these things, of course. Let's start from the hand back. So what's happening here is the verts are technically correct, but since it's segmented like this, it needs to have a connecting point, and I keep forgetting to do that. So this first section here is going to still be the right arm color. These next four were made the right forearm. So what we're going to do is remove the right forearm and add right arm color here. And we'll do the same thing over here. You can always come right back over here to the animation viewer and see how your progress is. Right here, we're already looking a lot better. Now the way his arms and legs connect to the body, I'm actually pretty happy with that, to be honest. If you want to see some other animations, here are some shortcuts. You can check out CD for the star dance. You can also check out CA for the walking animation. There are plenty more in here. I think every animation from Mario 64 should be present. Once you're done, you come back down here to rest pose, because you don't want to lose this one or mess it up. Alright, now to export your model. After all of that hard work, we're going to come to the Super Mario 64 tab and start changing all of this information here to your character's name. You know, I'm actually going to call them T-Sonic, because there are going to be a lot of other Sonic mods, and if you have the same file names as other mods, it might cause conflicts if they're enabled together. Label your character like this, make sure to leave that _geo here, and then we're going to pick a file path. So here I'm going to navigate to the folder that I had set up here, and you are going to want to create a folder, and within that folder make an actors folder. Erase this text and save it there. Then click this, do one last little apply as rest pose for luck, and export armature geo layout, and oh no, we've hit a snag! So this is going to be very common if you downloaded the character template files that I told you to. For some reason, the metal wing textures don't work properly when you're exporting textures as PNGs. So you're going to come over here to the metal model, select these wing textures, and switch them to the regular wing texture. That way it doesn't mess it up for your model later. Do it for this hat as well. It's the same thing. You just click this button and replace. Now if that's all set, it should export unless there's any more issues. Success. Like I said, it will not export if you haven't labeled like a certain vertice. They all have to be labeled, and if you have any double labeled, it won't export either. And about vertices, if you can't find which one hasn't been grouped, you can go into edit mode, go up to select, go to select all by trait, ungrouped vertices, and it'll highlight anything on your model that is not currently grouped. But for now, we're going to take a look at what that just gave us. So over here in our actors folder, we now have a T-Sonic folder, which contains a bunch of things for Mario, but also our thing for Sonic. So this is mission success. This means that we are basically there, and we're going to keep that over here for now. What we're going to do next is get to our Super Mario 64 Co-op Deluxe folder and head to mods, and in here you're going to see all of the mods that you've downloaded. These are a lot of the mods that I've created. Some of them aren't mine. And we're going to make a new folder. I usually do this for category's sake. CS Toei Sonic. You can call it whatever you want. In here, we are then going to take our character select template folder. I'm going to drag and drop all of that stuff in here. Now we have all this stuff. It's gonna look confusing. You're gonna have this little silent thing. Don't worry about it. Inside the actors folder, you're going to put T-Sonic. And after this helicopter goes by, I'll show you exactly what to do next. With T-Sonic in that folder, we're going to back out and head over to the main.lua file. Now, Lua files, you are going to need something like Notepad++ to edit. I use Notepad++, and this is going to look crazy again, so just take a breath and work with me here. I'm going to show you exactly what to change and what does what. So the stuff you need to be worried about right now to just get your character into the game for testing, I'm going to change these so it says, let's say, Toei Sonic. Down here, I'm going to change this to Toei Sonic. Down here, this is the most important one, where it says Geo, right here, you need to change it to your Geo file, so mine's T-Sonic. For your life icon, I'm going to be naming it T-Sonic as well, we'll come to that later. And we're also going to change our sound table for later. So change this where it says Kara or Dummy, I don't know what I left it as, to your character. This is gotta be case sensitive and the same for this part, okay? For voice table, make this the same. I'm going to come down here, change this to your character's name. It's for selection purposes. Voice table, same exact tense, same exact thing. And then down here, same thing. This is so when you have multiple characters loaded in your game, they're not going to mess up each other's voice files. Over here in your caps, you can also change this, so you can change it. I'm going to just make it all T-Sonic to match the Geo file, but I'll show you how to do these later, don't worry. That's everything you need to change for right now, so you can file, save, and we are going to move on to actually testing our mod. Wow, we're 40 minutes in, we're testing it, we're gonna see the game. Alright fellas, now that we have the T-Sonic thing in there and the Lua file set up, we're gonna open up Super Mario 64 Co-op Deluxe, and this is one of the coolest parts, I think, of this whole process. The game will actually generate this mod file for us, once it notices that we don't have one yet, which I think is really, really cool. So once you have Mario Co-op Deluxe open, we're gonna host mods and game modes, and then we're going to look around until we find our mod that we just made. So we find Toei Sonic, enable, back, and then we host. So we're going to scroll down this list until we find Toei Sonic. There, oh wow, he actually looks kind of menacing. Pick him from the list, and there he is. That's Toei Sonic in the game, and he's got script errors because his voice is not correct yet, but we'll get to that. This is a very clean import. I'm liking that a lot. He looks really good in this style, too. Looks good jumping around. But we have a lot more to do. Don't you worry. I'm extremely excited this is looking so good this far, though. Alright, I'm actually kind of excited to teach you this first part, because it took me a really long time to make it so blinking would work properly. And one thing I was doing wrong is I was coming over here and I was deleting every single texture that had to do with the old model. But you want to leave this open eyes skin texture, okay? Leave that one there. You can get rid of everything else that is not for your new model and the wings. You're going to want to keep the wings. If we want to make Sonic blink, we need to change it so this eye texture is using this open eyes skin texture instead. So we're going to click our model, we're going to go into UV editing mode, and then we're going to scroll over and we're going to click the viewport shading so we can see our colors again. And we're going to press L on our model to just get the front of Sonic's face. That's not his muzzle, I don't believe, it's just his eyes and the blue on his front face. I don't know what to call this, okay? And instead of this is gonna look weird, click assign on the Mario eyes, and Sonic is going to, he's gonna look a little different for a little bit, but do not panic. So what we want to do is we want to find the open Mario eyes in this list now. That would be Mario eyes center. See, our UVs here are trying to use this now. As you can see, we can make this terrifying if we wanted to. That's the Sonic Chronicles model, actually, I think. But yeah, so we're going to leave that there for now. But what we want to do here is we're going to want to unpack this file. So we can click that icon, unpack it, go over here to Image, and Replace. And this is where you're going to need blinking animations for your model. I said I made these Toei ones earlier. They're not always going to come with it. Sometimes they do. It's not always hard. You can just draw lines. It's an N64 game, so it doesn't have to look too crazy. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to replace this Mario Eye thing with this new texture that is 128 by 128. It's important to be a multiple of 16 by 16 or else this is not going to work. We have that all settled, though I'm Unsure if it is currently working. Let's see. It is a bit crusty though, and I think I know why. We can work this out in a second, don't worry. So I've adjusted the UVs so the eyes look like they're in about the right place. But as for it being extremely crumpled, you can come over here and perhaps glean the source. Open these up here. You know, I can just flat out change what texture it's using, I think. That'd probably be better. So what I ended up doing was just coming back over here to the Open Eye skin, scrolling down into the Materials tab, replacing the Mario Eyes file with the one that I wanted to use. So now it is all uncrusted. That might not happen to you. Sometimes things just happen to me that I can't explain. But we'll get to recoloring. It is a very simple process, and I will show you how it works. So now we're going to come over to the rest of these Mario heads, and this part may also feel tedious, but it's important. We are going to find the eye texture. I'm going to scroll down, change it from custom to SM64 decal, and then here in the sources tab, you are going to open, unpack, and then find your texture for the corresponding eye texture. So that is our half-closed eye. We're going to do that for every single one of these heads. The most important ones are these first two, and then the last one. Don't worry about the capless ones. We will deal with those soon. These right, left, up, down heads are unused. I usually just replace these eye textures with basically any other eye texture I have, but they have to be the same dimensions as the ones that you're actually hoping to switch into Mario. So don't give it, like, wildly different things. Don't pick a picture of your cat, for example. And don't accidentally use the mustache, like I think I just did. Okay, and if you replace those, you should see now that all of the heads have had their expressions changed. Again, all of these heads where Mario's just looking directions, you don't have to worry about those as much, but you do need to replace them or else this isn't gonna work. So that should actually just be all set now. Now to fix Sonic having this giant white patch on his face, now to fix the coloration issue here and make Sonic as a whole recolorable, which is the fun thing to have for, you know, playing the game with friends. So we were making all of these things decals. That is also an extremely funny face. I like that a lot. We were making these decals because a decal in this game is something that will make a solid color draw in any space that is transparent in the texture. So you can see around the eyes, that is all transparency. So that's why his entire forehead is white right now. There's nothing there, so it is just drawing a white void. All we need to do is go over here to his textures, and for Open Eye Skin, we're going to set this here to Skin. Actually, you know what? For Sonic, why don't we do Hair, because it's his fur color. And then for Fur Texture, we are also going to set this even though we haven't done it yet. And that one's easy, so we will now set that to a nice blue. Remember, you have to set Co-op Player Part here or else it won't be recolored, and choose which one it needs to be. Then here in Fur Texture, we're going to need to do a little bit more legwork. At this point, you can either edit in the program itself, or you can save your file and you can open it up in the image editor of your choice. So what we want to do here is we want to erase every bit of blue from this. So, you know, I'm using the magic wand tool. Very easy. We're also going to remove every bit of red, and we're going to start with just that. I will update this later to make the entirety of it recolorable. We now have that saved to our desktop, and we come back to Blender. We can see Sonic here. He's having a bit of a crisis. What we want to do is come up here, and we see in the Materials tab, Open Eyes, all set on its own. Fur Texture. We're now going to Image, Replace, and I'm going to replace it with this one. We're going to come back here, we're going to click Fur Texture, change it into a decal, which again draws a solid color on transparency, which we can then recolor to be the same color that we have here. You can copy this with Control-C, click out, head back to Fur Texture, paste it in, and now he is one solid color that can be recolored in-game. So if everything went according to plan, when we export this guy into the game now, he should both be recolorable in the options menu, and he should be blinking, which is my favorite part of it. We have one more thing to do. I almost forgot because it's out of sight currently, and you know what they say, out of sight, out of mind. So currently these are using the same blue that Sonic's entire body is, which is not something that we want. We're also going to do something about his gloves, we might as well. We're going to highlight his shoes, and now we're going to make a quick... Go back to object mode, and we're going to make a quick duplicate of this here by clicking Create Fast 3D Material, and then clicking this little button, opening up fur texture yet again, and then clicking this to duplicate it into its own instance. We're going to rename this and call it shoes. So now that we have shoes, we're going to go back to edit mode, and shoes is now going to be detected as its own file. So what we're going to do is we're going to assign the shoes to the shoes texture, then we're going to change this to a nice red. That way, we know his shoes will be nice and red. And here's some extra things you can do. If you don't want your character to switch to a different metal model, you can come over here and click Cap State Switch in this list, change Mesh Override to Material Override, and make sure the metal cap is here. Do both of these here, make sure they're like that. Scroll down here, change it, the torso tilt function, you can make it so the character doesn't lean forward when they run. I'm going to do that for now, because I kind of like that look for classic Sonic. If you delve further in here to the capless switch, you can make it so, if you open up the switch option 1, you can remove this. That way, he will never switch to this capless Mario monstrosity if you end up losing your hat, or at the end of levels, because Mario takes his hat off. And if your character's hands are not quite compatible with Mario's, you weren't able to line them up, you can always come over here to left arm all the way to left hand switch, remove the switch option, close, right hand switch, and remove all 4 of these switch options. There's a lot because Mario is right-handed, I guess. So that way, they will no longer switch to all of these extra models, therefore you do not need to edit them, enabling you to be extra lazy. Very, very nice. Quick side note, you'll notice if you have a bunch of these eye textures in your final folder after it's exported, that means that this is working and your character is probably going to start showing those little blinks in-game. I've gone ahead and put our newly generated folder over here in our actors folder, but now we're going to need to come back to the Lua folder and change a few numbers in here. So down here where it says palette underscore char, we're going to come into Blender and our textures and find the colors that we've been using. So over here we're going to grab this blue value, and we are going to set this on the hair color setting. And then we'll grab this red for the shoes, and we'll put it under shoes, because that's what I set it as. And here we are, back in the game. Sonic's back. And he's a lot lighter, but I think I'm going to make that better. I'm going to make that better at some point before I actually release the mod. There he is, he's blinking too! Like my little custom blinking animation. Of course, you only have 2 frames, so it can't be anything super smooth. That means he'll also have a little dying animation. I know Toei Sonic's got errors. I forgot I had to do sound still. You know what they say, when you love something, let it go. There he goes, he's got his dead eyes and everything. Oh, look at him, his little dead boy, little dead man. And now, if we go over to Character Select and hit the Custom Palette button, we've got Sonic, except he's different colors now. So we're gonna come over here to, let's see, hair, and then should be our color for, hey, there he is, that's Red Hot Sonic. And shoes, I think he also wears red shoes. It's a lot of red. There we go, a little darker red just to make it a little bit better. And eventually I'm going to add support for the gloves. But you can make them any color you want. And in a little bit, he'll have a little icon up there in the corner of the screen, and he'll also have a voice. Now for these last few things, I am going to fly through them because they're basically just extensions of what we've already done. We'll start with the hardest, and by hardest, I mean the most tedious. Creating a custom cap for your character is really easy. All you need to do is find another model that you'd like to use instead of Mario's hat, import that into your same Blender file, and put it over the hat here. And from here, we're just going to be doing the exact same thing that we already did with our new custom model over Mario. We're going to join the custom model with this old one so they're part of the same thing, delete all of the old one, and then make sure the vertex groups are correct, and voila! After you apply as rest pose, you're going to want to click the armature and then go into the SM64 tab. And typically what I name the caps are metal, wing, and normal. So if we're replacing the wing cap right now, I would call this T-Sonic Wing, for example. You don't need to follow my naming scheme, I'm just telling you, you can put whatever you want there, just remember what it is, and make sure it doesn't conflict with anything else. After you're able to export it, you're going to want to take that folder and put it into your Super Mario 64 Co-op DX Mods folder, where we've been putting our other Toei Sonic files. Important to note here, if you have another Geo file in this folder already, you are not going to get a new mod file generated. What you're going to need to do is remove your Geo files from that folder and then put them back after your new mod file is generated. Go ahead and do that for your wing and vanish cap as well, and you are ready to continue. Now these last 3 tasks are extremely simple, so you have made it past all the hard stuff. Pat yourself on the back. To give your character custom voice clips and sound effects, Follow this extremely easy process. The only rules with this part are your sound files have to be the .ogg file format, and they probably shouldn't be too long, or else you're going to annoy yourself with your character, because these voice lines get repeated a lot. What I like to do for this part is head over to the sounds resource, or you can grab sound effects from wherever you see fit, or record them yourself. It's all up to you. Once you have these voice clips, whatever they are, you can head over to this website I found called the Online Audio Converter. This is one of the only websites I've found that you can drag like 11 files onto and have it convert automatically to OGG format. So I'm gonna plug this one. Use this one when you're making mods. Now that we have our various .ogg files, we're going to place those in the Sounds folder in your current mod directory. So for me, that's my Toei Sonic Sounds folder. You should see a silent voice clip in there that I've included for you that is just a little useful thing if you don't want to add a sound to something. And finally, you're going to look through this list of sound effects that are notated so you know what they are, and simply add the new file names of your files where these old ones were, and make sure you keep the .ogg or else it's not going to work. There really isn't much more to it than that. Just make sure they are .ogg files, and make sure you write their names properly in your Lua. You may also get a million script errors if you try doing this, and sometimes it's because you put an extra period somewhere or just misspelled something. You can always hit F1 in-game, and it'll tell you exactly what's causing the problem. Just a pro tip for you there. And finally, our last lesson of the day, we have life icons and power meters. You guys are in for a treat this time. I literally just learned how to make custom power meters at the very end of the making of this video, so we have an extra thing to tack on. Both of these are going to be going in the textures folder inside your mod directory, and starting with the easier one, we have the life icon. You simply need to have any image that is 16 by 16 or some multiple of that, so 32 by 32, 64 by 64, 128 by 128, up to, I believe, 1024 by 1024, but you don't really need to be going that high with your textures anyway. This is what I've chosen for Sonic. It's a sprite from Sonic CD that just kind of shows him facing the front, which is a bit cursed, but I feel like works well for a life icon. Drop that in the textures folder, and if you've done it correctly, when your game starts up, it should generate this .tex file. And then, of course, when you select your character, you should see your new life icon. Just gotta make sure it's labeled correctly in the Lua file, and you're golden. The final thing we are going to learn today is custom power meters, because of course the power meter is shaped like Mario's face, and it has only just recently started bothering me. It's basically just some texture editing in your image processing program. You're gonna want to edit these two texture files here that are the normal power meter. I usually leave the very middle because I don't like messing with that nice slice of pie you have there, but it's all just replacing textures, and if you do it correctly and have them named correctly in your Lua, along with this nice little line that you can copy and paste that I'll leave in the description, you should start seeing that beautiful new health meter popping in whenever you take damage. Being bad at video games has never looked this good. And that will be all. I don't feel like doing a long-winded outro today, so I want to say if this helped you, let me know. If you have errors, let me know. And good luck making your characters. I've been having a lot of fun with this, so if you found something fun, really glad to have brought that to your attention. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good time with this, and I'll see you all next time.